Hey there, good morning and welcome back to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield. Well, the world is all a tizzy right now with the election, but we are not distracted here at Just the News about what's happening in defense issues. And joining me this morning is Lieutenant Colonel Dakota Wood. He's a senior fellow for defense programs at the Heritage Foundation, and he's also the editor of the new index from the Heritage Foundation for this year. It's called the Index of U.S. Military Strength. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me on.
So, Dakota, you guys put this out every year. So this was for the 2021 index. You just released it yesterday. What's the biggest change this year compared to last year that folks should know about?
Well, much more capable competitors. So anybody who's tracking headlines on China, for example, how dramatically they're improving their naval fleet, how large it is, improved missiles, those sorts of things. We're seeing similar investments in unmanned systems, robotics, and very high precision weaponry by countries like Iran and Russia. For the U.S. military, we've seen great gains in readiness. So the current force we have is training more, and they're more competent in what they're doing, keeping in mind larger scale conflict, but their equipment is still old and the force itself is still too small, given global responsibilities and where the country has interests. So that's why we gave it a marginal rating. In terms of our allies, they just aren't spending enough on their own defense. So we could let them kind of walk their own path, but ultimately that hurts our interests here at home. I mean, if we want to have jobs and prosperity and be able to sell things, access to markets, you have to have stable regions where Americans can go and do business and trade. So at some level, we have to invest in military capabilities to go into these other areas of the world, but we certainly need our allies to spend more, and they're just not doing that.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the, let's put up on screen a couple specific areas that you guys look at, the capability of threats. So I want our viewers to see this, the capability of threats. You guys were looking in particular at the areas of Russia, Iran, Middle East terrorism, AFPAC terrorism, China, and North Korea. Overall, you marked it as gathering these hotspot areas, but the formidable challenges of capabilities are Russia and China, according to your assessment, as you just mentioned. And then I want to go also to what you guys described, the behavior of threats. So looking at these same areas, the behavior of threats, Russia, Iran, Middle East terrorism, AFPAC terrorism, China, North Korea. So overall, there is a bigger gap between capability versus behavior. So China and Russia have more strong capabilities than they are currently behaving out. But in terms of this, the election is disputed here in the United States. But let's say hypothetically, if it is a Biden administration, we've heard over and over from folks who are worried that a Biden administration would not have a robust enough response to China. What's your view on that?
Well, we chose words that were descriptive instead of a scale of 1 to 5, right, on those threats and capabilities, et cetera. Threat is defined as the ability to do something. So are they modern, capable, robust? And then it's intent, but you can't really measure intent, so we look at observed behavior. So China and Russia have extraordinarily good militaries in terms of capability, and they've been acting muscular, right? So they haven't, well, Russia's invaded, but China hasn't. And that's why we score them a little bit less so on their behavior side. Now, this reflects historical realities. And so to your question about a Biden administration, there is this fascination with just diplomacy and just economic relationships and a disbelief that we would ever have to deal with a large-scale conventional war. And that if you look at the United States history for the last 200 some odd years, we find ourselves in a war about every 20 to 25 years. It's just the interaction between states. So going all the way back centuries, leading statesmen have said that if you want peace, you have to prepare for war, right? I mean, it's the deterrent value of a strong military. So to the extent the Biden administration underinvests in the military and believes that China will always behave properly, I think we're running a great risk as a country. So if we want good relationships with Korea and Japan and Vietnam and the Philippines to keep them on our team, they have to believe that we will be there for them in a moment of crisis. And right now we have little ability to do that. China knows that. They will take advantage of that. And that's why they're so expansionist and aggressive in their region. And hopefully a Biden administration would come to appreciate that. But I think we're running risk at this moment.
And what about Taiwan? Because we've seen reports that Taiwan has had some issues with accidents, military preparedness questions have been raised. Do you think that under a Biden administration that Taiwan would be left more at risk, or what's your sense about how a Biden position would be toward Taiwan?
My sense is they would be more at risk. I think there would be less willingness to more aggressively confront a China that is trying to coerce or intimidate Taiwan back under its umbrella, right? And you can only wait so long, and then it's too late. You know, the rhetoric and the diplomatic moves just haven't worked, and then your competitor actually takes action. And my fear is that's what China would do, somewhat like Chamberlain in Italy dealing with Herr Hitler, right? Trying to seek some kind of an accommodation up to the point when Hitler invades neighboring countries. So I think we could be running the risk of something like that. Taiwan is very aware of it. They want no part of the communist regime in Beijing. But from Beijing's standpoint, it is their ultimate objective to unify what they see as a greater China. And they have a very aggressive schedule for doing so.
And I want to talk about NATO, because NATO has historically been a counterbalance to Russia. You mentioned Russia as one of the strongest capabilities of threats and risks. With President Trump, if Trump, again, it's all disputed, but if it is a Biden administration, under Trump, we did see an increase in NATO spending from European countries. What do you think might happen under a Biden administration about NATO? Do you think that other countries, European countries, will be less willing or less interested to step up and pay what is under their own agreement, their required GDP spend?
Yeah, so I think the paid piece, I know that word has been used a lot. It really isn't. It's a contribution to collective security, right? So Germany should be making investments in its own security so that it can be a contributing partner to the larger NATO alliance. If they are underinvesting and they're not giving money to the United States, it's improving their own capabilities. But to the extent that they don't do that, if we continue to have interest in Europe, which we do, the burden then falls onto us even more so. So at the end of the Cold War, West Germany alone had 5,000 main battle tanks. Today, the combined Germany has fewer than 300. 2 years ago, none of its submarines were operationally deployable. Great Britain only has about 17 or 18 ships, surface warships in its whole Navy. China has added that number of ships to its Navy just in the last year or two. So when we saw the Trump administration being very blunt with Europe, with our NATO partners, are saying, look, you guys need to be doing for yourselves what you should be doing, and it benefits everyone. I think what we're seeing with the assembly of a Biden team is most of these people were associated with the Obama team. So to think that we were going to see any kind of policy differences from the same people is probably a stretch. So I think that a Biden administration would be less aggressive. They would wag their finger, certainly, but I don't think the Europeans would feel the same sort of pressure that they did under Trump, who was just extraordinarily blunt in saying, you people need to be doing what you should be doing. We would all be better off. And that kind of name and shame and that kind of pressure is what really resulted in some of the increases in NATO member spending that we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years.
All right. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Dakota Wood from the Heritage Foundation. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.